for offenses like urinating in public.
There's got to be only in New York, right? If somebody urinates in public, the person is telling you, I got a big problem. This is what broken windows theory is all about. I mean, if some guy is urinating in public, we got a problem. Now, you can do one of two things. You can ignore the problem and say, gee, I'm such a big, fuzzy-headed liberal that I'm going to walk away from it, and we're going to make believe there's no problem. That's New York City in the 1980s. That's New York City with 2,000 murders. That's New York City with 500,000 crimes. You have to pay attention to people urinating on the streets, and you have to get people to stop urinating on the streets. That's moving toward civilization. That's moving toward decency. That's what I mean by a decent society that people want to invest in, people want their children to live in. You've got to pay attention to somebody urinating on the street. It may be a minor thing, it may be a serious thing, but you cannot ignore it. You have to deal with it. It is against the law to urinate in public. If the next mayor would like to change that and invite people to urinate in public, then I guarantee you I will be the most popular mayor in the entire century about 3 years from now. Thank you.
And the theory is this. If you have a building, right, and you let people break one window, and you say, oh, it's only one window, and you let that go. And then they break another window. It's only 2 windows. I have 50. And they break 3, 4, 5. Eventually, they're going to break enough windows so the building crumbles. So their idea was, you have to take care of the small things, not just the big things. And they were analyzing America in the 1980s, where we had a lot of crime. And they said one of the reasons we had a lot of serious crime is because we didn't pay attention to small crimes that then grew into serious crimes. So the broken windows theory meant not that you shouldn't pay attention to big crimes like murder and major drug dealing and extortion. But you also had to pay attention to people breaking windows and people not. We used to have we have subways in New York. You have a turnstile. You put a token in. So you used to have a car. You put a token in and you go in. A lot of people used to jump over. Mm-hmm. And the police were there. They wouldn't enforce it. They just watched it. Just let it happen. They said if you started forcing those laws, not on everybody, you have to catch everybody, but enough people say they don't feel they have immunity to do it, you're going to find that not only you bring those crimes down, but you'll bring down the bigger crimes because these people won't graduate into becoming bigger criminals. And number two, your community will begin to feel safer because it's the smaller crimes that they get to see. It's the smaller crimes that make them feel bad about their neighborhood. The people who put ugly graffiti on buildings, the people who take somebody's purse, or the people who steal somebody's wallet. May not be a lot of money, but to that person it's enormously destructive. And if you don't pay attention to it, people feel unsafe. So when I became police commissioner and mayor, it's really funny because I used to be accused of micromanaging. People used to say, he thinks he's the police commissioner. And I hired my police commissioner, Bill Bratton. We put that broken windows theory into effect. And we paid attention to smaller crimes, to making people not feel afraid to go out at night and go to the movies or go to the library. Because in some neighborhoods in New York City, people felt locked into their houses. They were so afraid to go out at night. And then we developed a computer system called the CompStat system, where we could measure our crimes every day, every place in the city, and then we could figure out where we were successful and where we weren't. And then we could move our police around based on where the crime was. In fact, if it wasn't for the CompStat system, we never would have been able to reduce crime as much as we did, because it gave us a real picture of where the crime was taking place, so we could get our police there right away.
A broken window. In his classic work, Thinking About Crime, renowned social scientist James Q. Wilson observed that disorder and crime are usually inextricably linked, that human behavior is profoundly affected by its environment. Broken windows, graffiti, drunkenness, and open displays of unfettered sexuality are an invitation for crime, a declaration that the environment is uncontrolled and uncontrollable, and that anyone can invade it to do whatever damage and mischief the mind suggests. Almost like clockwork, when this broken window effect is reversed and these elements are removed or suppressed within a community, crime rates plummet. An ordered and more dignified atmosphere encourages civility and moral behavior, while disorder breeds anarchy and immorality.
Hi, how you doing?
In 1982, American social scientist James Q. Wilson and criminologist George L. Kelling wrote an article in The Atlantic. In it, they claimed, quote, social psychologists and police officers tend to agree that if a window in a building is broken and is left unrepaired, all the rest of the windows will soon be broken. This is as true in nice neighborhoods as in rundown ones. It was in that article that they introduced the broken windows policing theory, which basically concluded that signs of public disorder, like broken windows on a building or litter or even graffiti, were evidence of petty crimes that would eventually lead to more serious crimes like robbery, rape, and murder. The thinking went that if policing for these misdemeanor crimes ramped up, communities would be kept safer, crime rates would be lower, resulting in a more lawful and ordered society. This theory gained prominence in big cities like New York and LA. Even though its proponents hailed the major drop in crime to the validity of this theory, opponents criticized the excessive policing and mass incarceration that followed, and of course, the singling out of minority communities. The practice is all but dead in some places like New York City, but it might be making a comeback. Here to talk about this short-sighted policy that's been around for 40 years is Edwin Raymond, a police lieutenant who has experience putting this theory into practice. I would like to note that Edwin is speaking as a private citizen and not on behalf of any police department. Thank you so much for your willingness to speak on this tonight on Amplified, and welcome. So I am so interested in picking your brain about about broken window policing, because you've had firsthand knowledge of how this policy is implemented. Just a few days ago, you tweeted, "Becoming a cop opened my eyes to what truly happens behind the curtain. There's no way to police this way impartially because you'd never be able to police white areas." First off, Edwin, how does this policy work? And also, what were you privy to that the public might be surprised to learn?
First off, thanks for having me, Aisha. It's an honor and privilege to be part of this program. So prior to being in law enforcement, I was on the receiving ends of the policy as a young black, young boy, young black man, just growing up in Brooklyn. And it always puzzled me when police officers would stop me for the most nuanced, innocuous infractions. Sometimes I didn't even do anything wrong. And what I didn't know at the time was it was broken windows that was playing in the background. These officers were under pressure to get these to make these type of stops and get these type of summonses and arrests, and fitting the description by being a black man. Unfortunately, I felt as thousands of others in New York City and throughout this nation, I felt what it felt to be on the receiving ends of that.
So how does that policy actually work? You said that officers are under pressure. Tell us more about that.
So upon completing the police academy, immediately we were given quotas, unlawful enforcement quotas. And the quotas were for summonses, tickets, arrests and also stop and frisk. And I was actually very shocked to see that these quotas were real and it was given, and everything went around whether or not an officer was able to meet his or her quotas. Whether you get a day off, whether you get promoted, whether, everything that happens, it's basically saying it's productivity. That's how it's seen. And this is exclusively in Black and brown areas. And the pseudo justification for that is, well, this is where we're having the more violent crimes. So this is where it makes sense to police this way. But instead, what ends up happening is a large percentage of the demographic ends up having to pay for the work, for basically the actions of just less than 1% of that same demographic. And no other demographic is policed that way. It just doesn't make sense to police Black and brown communities that way.
I've always heard this idea of quotas. I'm driving my car towards the end of the month, and I'm like, oh, I better slow down because I got tinted windows. Somebody might get me because, they got a quota. But I think that I assumed it was in part joking that we assume that that police officers have these quotas. But you're telling us that literally they are told before they even assess the crime that's happening on a street that you just need to hem up X number of people because we assume that those stats will somehow shape the way that crime goes down in that community. I would love to see the thinking behind that and the data behind that. Actually, we are, which is why we know it doesn't work. Tell us, what is Operation Impact?
So Operation Impact started, I'd say, in the early 2000s, where areas that have more violent crimes were basically flooded with rookie cops who are on foot most of the time, and they were given quotas with, again, arrests, tickets, and stop and frisk. And these rookie cops, it was insane. It was just, that's all you existed for, to get those numbers. And after about 3 to 5 years of doing this, that's when you can start getting off the hamster wheel by putting in for a promotion to the detective squad or some other specialized unit. And that's how you would get off the hamster wheel. But by then there would be other academy classes that have already replaced you. And this is essentially the premise of how policing was done for years in the New York City Police Department, different police departments throughout the nation. So that was Impact. Rookie officers under immense pressure to constantly get enforcement numbers in the Black and brown communities.
This is really illuminating. I mean, we're thinking about people who are starting off a career that their training, right, being a rookie and being on the ground, their training is really about, to me, targeting Black and brown people. Talk to us about the ways that broken window policing does promote racial inequity.
It's in several ways. One, again, and again, this is the colorblind racism, if you will, the notion that, well, it's not that it's racist, it's just this is where the issues are, so this is where we're putting more resources, and obviously where we put more cops, you're going to get more enforcement. That on the face, that might seem as if it's colorblind, but in reality, the problem becomes what people are being stopped for, what it is that's being enforced, because for a long time, majority of it is substance abuse, particularly marijuana use, public consumption of alcohol, illegal public consumption of alcohol. These are things that, according to the Department of Health, actually happens a lot higher in white areas, more affluent areas, and yet it's being used as probable cause to stop Black folks. And the thinking is, if we just get as petty as possible, we stop enough, you never know who you're gonna get. Because those rare occasions where, someone who didn't pay their transit fare, jumped the turnstile, and was stopped for something petty, ended up having a gun on them, that's been thrown in every officer's face. You see, and this is why we have to stop everyone. And that's the thinking in the Black community, stop everyone. The collateral damage, the externalities, if you will, those things are not considered when it comes to policing certain demographics. And we don't need that. I always let folks know, a few decades ago when it was, Italian mafia that was leaving bodies all over the East River, the Italian community was not over-policed. The Italian community was given resources, and those who were involved in criminality, they were surgically sought after and faced justice. Those things, within 1 or 2 generations, Italian Americans were able to basically ascend upward mobility. And again, why is it that Black and brown folks are not afforded this same thing that has worked for other demographics in the United States? If you study crime in the 20th century in America, you know, there are many different ethnic white groups that came here that were over-policed, that were oppressed. And again, once they were given access to whiteness, resources, and proper precision surgical policing, the entire demographic didn't have to pay for the work of less than 1%. And today, again, those demographics are not even thought of when people think of poverty.
Wow. Wow. I want to talk to you about the policy side of this, because there are people who are making decisions that aren't necessarily experiencing on firsthand what you are. Rudy Giuliani first implemented the broken window theory when he was a mayor. Bill de Blasio then got rid of it. But now newly elected Mayor Eric Adams wants to restore it under what he calls his battle plan to beat back escalating crime in the city. What do you make of this?
So just a slight correction, Bill de Blasio did not, from what I know, he didn't get rid of it. It wasn't self-corrective action. It was pressure from whistleblowers, activists, lawsuits, et cetera. So it was suppressed a bit, but it was never self-corrective action. The new mayor has roots in being a reformer. You know, this is something that I realize a lot of folks don't know. He was the original police whistleblower. So he has a very unique perspective on these issues. Now, in terms of what's being presented, the issue that I've always seen with plainclothes is the lack of accountability, right? Officer jumps out, violates someone's rights, jumps back in the car, drives away. You don't know who just violated you. This is why after the murder of George Floyd, one of the things that people called for was for no more plainclothes. Officers should be in uniform. That way they're easily identifiable. From what I've gathered with this new unit, officers will be identifiable. It won't be the typical uniform, but they will be identifiable through means in a different type of uniform. So as long as that's met, it's not as, I don't think it's as bad. As long as we stay away from quotas and pressure, then it can actually work, because you do need a set of officers specifically focusing on the more serious crimes and serious things going on, because in a city with nearly 9 million people calling 911, if every officer was simply responding to the radio runs, every officer would be tied up, and that opportunity to run into something, that opportunity when someone needs them, it's going to be more difficult, because as you're responding to one radio job, 4 or 5 more are jumping in on the queue. And once you finish that job, you got to run to the next one, run to the next one. And it starts to burn the officers out, to then expect those same officers to focus on the more violent crimes that unfortunately we've been having for the last 2 years. It'd be asking too much. It'd be almost impossible. So to have specific officers targeting the more violent crimes, that's the part that makes sense. What can become problematic is if those officers are pressured, have quotas. This is what we have to stay away from. This is what has happened in the past.
Interesting. Okay.
And this is one of those systemic things that people don't pay attention to. When the stars align, people focus on the individual cop. They want that individual prosecuted, et cetera. And there are consequences for actions. But on the more systemic side, the upstream solution, if you will, we have to get rid of and make sure quotas never come.
Well, Edwin Raymond, thank you so much for joining us and for kind of opening up some light from the inside on how all of this works with the quotas and why they're so problematic. Really appreciate your insights.
The city's
Thank
top
you.
cop defending her decision today to crack down on quality of life crimes.
And it's already faced a lot of pushback from critics who call it a return to broken windows policing of the past. Linda Schmidt here now with the new comments from the commissioner. Linda.
Yeah, hi there, Steve and Lori. Well, first of all, the NYPD's commissioner saying that the department does not have any choice in this matter. There were 31 shootings over a 3-day period last weekend alone.
This is an all hands on deck.
NYPD Commissioner Keechant Sewell is not backing down on her decision to arrest violators on quality of life crimes, including turnstile jumping, open drug selling, public drinking, dice games, and public urination. It is a return to what is called broken windows policing, implemented under former Mayor Rudy Giuliani back in the 1990s. The belief is that smaller quality of life crimes lead to more serious crimes, dysfunction, dysfunction and chaos. Critics say broken windows policing targets and incarcerates more people of color.
We are focusing on the people, the places, and the things that lead to criminality and lead to violence and deteriorate the quality of life for everyday New Yorkers.
During the de Blasio administration, district attorneys stopped prosecuting most offenders of quality of life crimes, including Bronx DA Darcel Clark.
What I did last year was based on what I knew then.
But moving forward, DAs are now on alert to start prosecuting quality of life crimes.
I've had conversations with the DA as well, and we understand that when we bring these cases forward, we have to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis.
We are happy to be involved in any initiative that's going to keep our communities safe.
The two were together to announce the arrest of 2 gang members for selling 33 guns, some of them assault rifles and ghost guns, to an undercover police officer. But the topic turned to quality of life crimes when reporters started asking questions.
And by the way, it was just earlier this week, I believe it was on Monday, that Mayor Adams also stressed the need for district attorneys to start prosecuting turnstile jumpers.